In the headlines tonight,
an increased volume of traffic coming in from Kenya.
Immigration confirms the crossing of hundreds of people from Kenya ahead of elections, business slow at border points. Bus operators halt transportation of passengers and goods to Kenya ahead of the elections. Also, KCCA law enforcement officers joined by police and the army in Operation Vendors Evicted from Kiseka Market. And in sports, we bring you the final update from the Commonwealth Games from Birmingham that are coming to an end. A very good evening and welcome to CTV PM edition. Today is the 8th of August 2022. I hope you had a fantastic day. My name is Agi Oase with Isaac Luchamzi on sign language. In the top stories tonight, immigration have today confirmed that hundreds of Kenyans are crossing the border to Uganda each day ahead of the presidential election slated for tomorrow as fears of potential violence continue to increase. Sources on the border points have also revealed that many Ugandans working in Kenya are also returning home following fears of election violence. We have that report.
At Uganda's border with Kenya in Busia, business are slower than ahead of the elections that will take place tomorrow. Some of the traders we spoke to at the border say their election wave has affected their business because Kenyan clients are no longer crossing to Uganda to buy commodities. At the main entrance in Busia, traffic is still low and few people can be seen crossing the border. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the government of Uganda today confirmed that hundreds have been crossing to Uganda in the last couple of days ahead of the elections.
We are experiencing an increased volume of traffic coming in from Kenya, especially through Busia border and Wakaka. We have these volumes of traffic has increased threefold. We do not know whether it is because of the elections coming up tomorrow in Kenya.
While addressing journalists today at the weekly security briefing at the police headquarters, the spokesperson of the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Simon Mundai, revealed that many Ugandans who have been working in Kenya have also returned to Uganda.
These people coming in are Ugandans who are returning returning home, because most of these work in Kenya, and normally whenever there is an election, I think they have some sense of fear, so some of them return home to first watch the situation as it unfolds, then return after the elections.
According to the police spokesperson, Fred Enanga, security has been beefed up at the border points ahead of the elections.
We want to wish all Kenyans a very peaceful, safe and secure election. We are also happy that our counterparts, the security agencies in Kenya, are well prepared for the enforcement and policing of the elections there.
Enanga says that Uganda is ready for any eventualities that may happen during and after the elections.
Although we do not anticipate any possibilities of civil unrest, as the joint security agencies, we continue to pay close attention to the electoral climate in Kenya. As always, we have contingency plans in case of any potential scenarios impacting our citizens.
Meanwhile, business is slow for the people in the clearing and forwarding business at the Busia border. Musa Omolo, an agent, says the last 2 days have been a nightmare. Kenyans like Basil Etiang say that they are ready to go for the elections.
Although we have two horses that are really competing seriously, they are very close, but we expect at least one will come victorious. And our hope is that at least one gets 50 plus one.
Michael Chibuika, the Busia Resident District Commissioner, says they are ready to maintain peace in case if the election goes sideways. The elections in Kenya are coming at a time when the country is still healing from the 2007-2008 post-election violence that left over 1,000 people dead. Tony Patila Humza, CTV PM edition.
Members of Parliament have today weighed in on the upcoming elections in Kenya, revealing that Uganda should pick a leaf from Kenya when it comes to holding peaceful elections. According to some of the opposition legislators, although Uganda is Kenya's neighbor, the two countries are totally different. We have that report.
Kenya will go to polls in one of the tightest presidential races they've held in recent times. Ahead of elections, members of parliament have today given their opinions on the election. According to Mwadan Kunyinji, the shadow minister for foreign affairs, Uganda's political terrain is totally different from that of Kenya.
I've seen Kenya accrediting observers, including our own President Chagwen Setam Robert, and so many other African leaders. They have been accredited and they are in Kenya to observe the Kenyan election. In Uganda, taking example of our previous election, observers were denied accreditation, civil society was clamped down and closed, social media was closed. In Kenya, we have not seen any of that happening. Social media is open, civil society is open, observers have been accredited, institutions like the Electoral Commission has remained independent and has allowed all candidates to canvass and campaign throughout Kenya without interference.
Nkunyinji says Kenya as a country has challenged other East African countries when it comes to acts of democracy.
We are seeing Kenyan democracy highly developed and allowing institutions to be independent. People don't cling on power. So I think it's a good experience. If by the end of the electoral process nothing changes, Kenya will have demonstrated a very mature democracy, as it has already shown in years and past elections. But we are hopeful that Kenya has demonstrated a very mature democratic process, which will result in two people's free will, hopefully. And I think it's a good experience for Kenya. It's the reverse in Uganda, and we ought to copy, and we ought to allow our laws to operate, and we ought to remind our institutions that they can exist and they exist with continuity by allowing the people of Uganda to own the country and the future through an electoral process, as we are seeing in Kenya.
Other members say the recent elections held in Kenya have shown that elections should not divide the country.
We have seen different scenarios in the voting system or in the voting process in this country. There's a lot of tear gas, a lot of violence, people dying, problems with the Electoral Commission, problems at every level of the voting process. However, in Kenya, everything is normal. Actually, the president has particularly shown that you can differ on ideas, but you live in the same country. And at a time where somebody's ideas can be practical, you can support them to make them happen.
Kenya is far ahead. In fact, we are not going to have elections in Kenya. We are going to have one president, the sitting president, handing over power to another president. We are going to see the current president not appearing on the ballot paper. So for Uganda, whereby you always have a sitting president on the ballot paper, the way the police in Kenya is behaving as if the police is for Kenyanese, it is supervising Kenyanese, and they will all remain Kenyanese. But when you come here, you find that the police is behaving as if it's not for...
Geoffrey Macho says the business is as usual at the border, with heavy deployment at the border points.
Our side of Uganda, the condition is business as normal, apart from our people making more money because there is more business for now. I don't appreciate because there is good deployment in the side of Kenya, which is a sign of controlling or containing any situation in the case of any outcome. But the whole situation shows there is a very major activity going to take place tomorrow.
Many Ugandans, including opposition bigwigs and former Ugandan presidential candidates like Dr. Kizza Besigye, Robert Kyagulanyi Ssentamu, have already arrived in Kenya, where they will play the role of election observers. Sarah Nakandi for CTV PM Edition.
The Kenya Kwanza Alliance have come forward to refute claims that they are planning to rig the election in the presidential election scheduled for the 9th of August. The allegations were raised by the Azimio la Umoja camp led by the former Prime Minister and the presidential candidate Raila Odinga against his rival William Ruto.
As voting day approaches, tensions are rising in Kenya, where Deputy President William Ruto is vying against former Prime Minister Raila Odinga. Ahead of tomorrow's elections, William Ruto's Kenya Kwanza have today come out to strongly condemn the remarks made earlier by their fierce rivals Azimio la Umoja that they were trying to rig elections and to disorganize the voters.
The good thing that IEBC has done is that in every polling station, in every stream, there is only one booklet equal to the number of voters in that stream. So once that booklet is finished, the voting is closed and there cannot be any material. So we will just ensure that other than that one particular booklet, no other material enters the center. If Uhuru Kenyatta has a way of sending ballot papers by osmosis to that center, then he can succeed.
According to the Azimio la Umoja camp, which is led by Raila Odinga, the deputy president's side have been covertly planning to rig the forthcoming polls.
Kubwa wa criminal investigation, DCI, ameonyesha vizuri vile watu wa Venezuela walikuja wakashikana na Chebukati waibe kura.
These remarks come just a day after 4 independent electoral and boundaries commission officials were dismissed for allegedly meeting a candidate at their home. During the press conference, the Kenya Kwanza called for peace during the elections and warned against those intending to engage in violence.
And also to tell our supporters, do not be provoked into violence, because this time round, the security apparatus of this republic are the ones who are being targeted to be used for violence. And we also want to tell our police that you'll be held personally accountable and culpable if you actually disrupt violence. There is no question about getting orders from above.
An Ipsos survey last week showed Raila Odinga in the lead with 47% and William Ruto trailing him on 41%. However, Kenyans will decide their next president when they go to the ballot come tomorrow in the most tightly contested presidential elections of recent times. Absalom Wangoru for CTV PM Edition.
Bus owners and operators in Uganda have halted transport services to Kenya ahead of the presidential election scheduled for tomorrow. According to the bus operators that we found in downtown Kampala, they will be not transporting passengers and goods until the election is over and there is guaranteed peace.
With just few hours to the Kenya presidential elections, a lot of uncertainty continues to loom in Uganda. Uganda, being a landlocked country, depends on its borders with Kenya for trade and access to the ocean. Many Ugandans who ply the Kenya route are now worried about the elections and the outcome. Transport operators who ferry passengers to Kenya and Uganda say that they have decided to cancel operations in Kenya until elections are done.
At the moment, we are not sending buses to Nairobi. We stopped operations yesterday, and if you go to the system, it's already closed.
We have stopped yesterday until the election gets over.
We found the busy park isolated with little activity. Some of the bus operators, especially those who witnessed what happened in Kenya in 2007, believe that some violent incidents might break out again.
So the situation in Kenya is still not bad. So we are waiting for tomorrow, because tomorrow there are going to be election in Kenya. So we are waiting to see and to hear what will be there in Kenya.
The chairperson of the bus drivers in Uganda, Huntington Chiwanuka, is optimistic about the elections this time round.
People's properties were burnt, like in these cargo buses, and also these buses were carrying luggage and also the passengers. Many of them died. So because of that, that's why most of these bus owners are saying, no, this way around we are not going to take our buses because of what happened.
But today we have stopped until the elections are over. But according the way I see, because for me I've been the first driver bus which crosses the border when Kenya elections are over. Those past one, they have been chaotic. Yeah? But now, for me, according to me, the way I see, there won't be any chaos. Why? Because the two big elephants are united. Those are Chukuyus and Ruos.
At the moment, Ugandans are waiting for the outcome of the election. Safi, Mokele Baluku and Chris, Samale Musemakula for CTV PM Edition.
Thanks for watching. CTV PM Edition takes a short break, but we'll be right back with more stories. Do stay with us. Hello and welcome back. Thank you for watching CTV PM Edition with me, Agi Uwase, and Isaac Luchamazi on sign language. Now moving on, 4 candidates have been duly nominated to contest for the Busongora South County by-election in Kasese District that is scheduled to take place on the 18th of August. The candidates who have been nominated today include Jackson Mbaju of the NRM Party, Bernadette Businge of the Democratic Party, and Aloysius Baguma Kagema of the FDC, as well as Doreen Izagire, who is an independent candidate. Let's take a look.
The Kasese District Electoral Commission Returning Officer Ismail Taki Atujukire led today's nomination exercise, and at 9 a.m. in the morning, Jackson Mbaju, who won the Court of Appeal case in Kampala, which prompted the by-election, was duly nominated. Mbaju says that he will not allow any person to deny the voters their rights to vote their favorite candidate.
In the other elections and by-elections, malpractices have been exercised with the support of police and the military. Yes. True. For Kasese, we are ready for anything. We are ready for anything.
Other candidates who are nominated include Democratic Party candidate Bernadette Businge, who pledged to advocate for modern agriculture and promoting health and education, among others.
How are the farmers benefiting from the national cake, I can call it? You see, they always say agriculture is the backbone, and a farmer is left behind. You will look at the prices of the agricultural products versus the products of the industrial materials.
Aloysius Baguma Kagema, FDC candidate, who was flanked by Kasese woman MP Florence Kabugo, was later nominated. According to him, the constituency is facing a number of challenges because of poor representation.
Actually, members of Songora South have been marginalized for quite long. The immediate challenge they have is the problem of water. These people have no safe water for drinking. And that is going to be item number one on my agenda, making sure that the people of Songora South get clean, safe water for drinking.
Doreen Izagire, an independent candidate, was the last person to be nominated today. Security was beefed up ahead of nominations with heavy police presence. According to the returning officer, at least 11 people picked nomination forms, but only 4 so far have been fully nominated.
I pray that you will have peaceful procession. Yes. We shall have. We shall allow you to have processions within your constituency. as you head to the venue where you're going to celebrate the nomination.
On Saturday, NRM bigwigs arrived in Kasese and have since pitched camp in the district ahead of the by-election.
And we have commissioned the campaign of our candidate, our flag bearer, Honorable Mujungu Tembo, who is going to be nominated next week on Tuesday. And we are going to work hard to make sure that he wins with a resounding victory.
After nominations, candidates will campaign for 6 days before elections, and elections will be held on the 18th of August this month. Joel Kaguta, CTV PM Edition.
In a bid to turn Kampala into a smart city, Kampala Capital City Authority, police and the army have confiscated several goods and items in an operation carried out in Kiseka Market in downtown Kampala. Several people who were operating on verandas were arrested for operating within an unauthorized location, but later released after cautioning them.
Operations aimed at turning Kampala into a smart city have continued to take shape yet again. This morning, Kampala Capital City Authority officials, assisted by the police and the army, took to downtown Kampala to raid the city of people who have put up illegal structures and are working on verandas. It was Kiseka Market that faced the wrath of the law enforcement officials. Many women who were operating roadside cooking stalls were arrested in what appeared to be a cat and mouse chase. Others involved operating Rolex were not spared either. It took more than 1 hour for the enforcement team to clean up Kiseka Market. The affected people were not happy with the move.
Really, the government eno yajja kulumirirwa muntu wa wansi oba yajja kumubonyabonya.
The chairperson of the vendors in the area, Tadeo Mugerwa, says that the affected people should be given another place to settle for work.
Minister yajja wano, Prime Minister waffe w'eggwanga n'agamba ettaka weeriri eri abaki eri abantu. Bwe kiba nti ettaka weeriri eri abantu, abantu babawe ettaka lyabwe.
Some of the people who were trying to disrupt the duties of Kampala Capital City Authority were arrested and later released after negotiations with their leaders. Hakim Lubega, who led the operation on behalf of KCC, says they are trying to enforce the law that creates a smart city for all.
We delayed to come along this Kiseka lane. We have started today to clear up this area. We are going to work with the people around Kiseka to make sure that we clean these areas, everyone to enjoy a smart city, free town.
According to the authority, they are trying their best to ensure that people are operating in the city legally in authorized locations. Safi, Mokili Belogan Chris, Semale Musemakula for CTV, PM Edition.
The Ministry of Health has today called for new mechanisms to address drug stockouts in all health facilities across the country. The ministry made these remarks while officiating over the launch of the National Strategy for Integration of Sexual and Reproductive Health, HIV, Gender-Based Violence Services for Universal Health Coverage with the goal of enhancing services.
The COVID-19 pandemic that ravaged the world for 2.5 years has had adverse effects on the health sector in Uganda. Here, it not only worsened sexual reproductive health, HIV prevalence rates, but it also led to increase in gender-based violence. At the launch, the Minister of State for Primary Health Care, Hanifa Kawoya Bangrana, called for a better approach to ensure availability of essential drugs in all health facilities.
Designing a mechanism to ensure the availability of commodities for both SRH, HIV, TB, and other diseases at the health facilities to prevent stockouts of essential commodities for these diseases and integration.
Minister Kawoya also emphasized the urgent need to improve the health infrastructure. The minister has also called for training of health extension workers in communities on the delivery of sexual reproductive health, HIV, and gender-based violence services to the people.
That this person oppressing and beating this woman is unfair. And they came from somewhere until they also. And the people, the human beings were just watching. Gender-based violence is done around us and around somewhere.
United Nations Population Fund Deputy Country Representative Abigail Musembuli today commended Uganda for integrating sexual reproductive health, HIV, and gender-based violence. She also urged stakeholders in communities to join hands to fight teenage pregnancies by scaling appropriate sexuality education to the adolescents.
I also want to draw our attention to the issue of young people dropping out of school due to pregnancy. Let us do whatever it takes to ensure we work with leaders, parents, and other key stakeholders to provide age-appropriate sexuality education to prevent teenage pregnancies.
According to experts, 6 components are needed necessary for effective public health program implementation. These include innovation, technical package, effective performance management, partnership and coalition communication, and political commitment. Shamim Natebo Wetendo, CTV PM Edition.
Thank you, Shamim, for that report. In our regional news tonight, Chad military government has signed a deal in agreement to the launch of peace talks with the opposition, while the U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor have both stressed the historic ties between their two countries ahead of bilateral talks in Pretoria. Let's take a look. Chad's military government has signed a deal with more than 40 opposition groups to launch national peace talks later this month, although the main rebel outfit refused to take part. After 5 months of mediation efforts by Qatar, the main rebel Front for Change and Concord in Chad FACT announced hours before the ceremony at Doha Hotel that it would not sign the deal. Under the agreement, Mahamat Idris Deb's Transitional Military Council and hundreds of opposition representatives will launch a national peace dialogue in the capital, N'Djamena, on August 20th. The dialogue aims to agree the schedule and rules for a presidential election that Deby has promised by October. FACT and other opposition groups have demanded that he announce that he won't be standing in the election. Deby has said this can only be negotiated in N'Djamena. 43 of the 47 groups who remained at the end of the mediation signed the accord to start national talks. The UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the African Union urged the junta and the opposition to seize the latest opportunity to stabilize a country considered key to international efforts to stamp out Islamic extremists in the Sahel region. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken and South Africa's Foreign Minister Naledi Pandor have both stressed the historic ties between their two countries ahead of bilateral talks in Pretoria. Mr. Blinken and Ms. Pandor also highlighted the importance of their cooperation in areas such as trade, investment, health, and science. But the elephant in the room was the war in Ukraine. Relations between the two countries have been strained by their differing positions on Russia's invasion of Ukraine. South Africa has remained neutral in the Ukraine war, refusing to join Western calls to condemn Moscow. While neither mentioned it explicitly, Ms. Pandor did state that the world is going through an extraordinarily difficult period, listing conflict as one of the challenges. She also said that diplomatic efforts were necessary in order to resolve the conflict. The foreign minister also acknowledged that she and Mr. Blinken had very frank discussions where at times they wouldn't agree, but has not broken their friendship, and further went on to say that it has made it stronger. Mr. Blinken said he was grateful to Ms. Pandor for helping him to look at things in a different way and called for their current position and ongoing conversation. He is set to announce a new U.S. strategy for Africa later on Monday as the U.S. tries to counter the influence of China and Russia on the continent. In our international news tonight, Israel-Gaza ceasefire holds overnight after days of violence, while the U.S. Senate has approved a bill that includes $369 billion, that's about £305 billion for climate action, the largest investment in America's history. ceasefire between Israel and Palestinian militants in the Gaza Strip appears to be holding. The Egypt blockade truce followed 3 days of violence, with Israel targeting the Palestinian Islamic Jihad (PIJ) and militants firing rockets into Israel. At least 44 Palestinians died in the most serious flare-up since an 11-day conflict in May 2021. On Monday, Israel began lifting its blockade of the Strip, allowing the fast fuel tanks to enter. The latest violence began with attacks by Israel on the sites in the Gaza Strip, which its military said was in response to threats from a militant group. It followed days of tensions after Israel arrested a senior PIJ member in the occupied Western Bank. By Sunday evening, the Palestinian Health Ministry said that 15 children had been confirmed among the 44 deaths recorded. Gaza's health ministry has blamed Israeli aggression for the deaths of Palestinians and for the more than 300 people wounded. Israel, for its part, said that it hit 170 PIJ targets during the operation, codenamed Breaking Dawn, killing several high-ranking PIJ members and destroying tunnels and weapons storage sites. A spokesman for the Israel Defense Forces said that they had information about 35 Palestinian deaths. 11 of them were involved civilian casualties, including wives of the terror group's commanders in the south, victims of IDF attacks. Another 15 civilians were killed by PIJ fire, and General Kochev said 1,100 projectiles were fired from the Gaza Strip during the flare-up, with 200 landing into Gaza. The U.S. Senate has approved a bill that includes $365 billion. That's about 305 billion pounds for climate action, the largest investment in America's history. The authors of the Inflation Reduction Act say it will cut the country's carbon emission by 40% by 2030. Some households could receive up to $7,500 in tax credit to buy an electric car and $4,000 for a used car. The bill, a key plank of Mr. Biden's agenda, will now be sent to the Democrat-controlled House. It is expected to be backed there as soon as this week before it can be signed into law by Mr. Biden. With the U.S. midterm election just 3 months away, the bill's passage will be seen as a boost for the Democrats, and the U.S. has been hit by deadly flooding and wildfires in the recent years. Climate change increases the risk of the hot, dry weather that is likely to fuel wildfires. The world has already warmed by 1.1 degrees Celsius since the industrial era began, and temperatures will keep rising unless governments around the world make steep cuts to emissions. Let's take a short break, but we'll be right back with more stories in the world of sports. Do stay with us.
The Commonwealth Update, brought to you by Alphabet.
Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. You are still watching CTV PM edition with me, Agi Uwase, and Isaac Luchamuzi on sign language. Moving on to the world of sports, it's been a roller coaster ride for the Uganda athletes at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, which are finally coming to an end tonight. Right now, we are joined by our reporter Clive Chaze, who is in Birmingham, United Kingdom, to bring us the latest report. Good evening, Clive.
Good evening, Agi, and thanks for having me this evening.
Oh yes, how are you doing in Birmingham today?
We are managing, of course, the curtains for the 2022 Commonwealth Games do come to an end today. Behind me is the Alexander Stadium, and the locals have started coming in slowly by slowly at about 8 p.m. here, which is 10 p.m. that side. The closing ceremony will officially be starting. Over the 5,000 athletes, by the way, did take part in these games from 72 former British colonies, including Uganda, and they did participate in 280 medal events. That is about 20 different disciplines. And for the first time in history, women, actually, there were more medals to win for women compared to men. It was the first time it was happening at the 2022 Commonwealth Games. And there is an interesting stat, by the way. The best performing team on the African continent, which is Nigeria, they ranked 7th overall, and they were the best African team. They won 12 medals at this event, and all the 12 medals were won by ladies. None of their male athletes did win a gold medal at this event. But of course, the eye-catching moment for Uganda is the fact that we get to leave the 2022 Commonwealth Games with 5 medals in total. 3 of those are being golds, and the other 2 are being bronze. History was made by Teddy Nachimuli when she did become the first female Ugandan boxer to represent at the Commonwealth Games, and she did win herself a bronze medal. Interestingly, she won that medal without throwing a punch, because her quarterfinal opponent weighed a kilo heavier than what she was supposed to weigh. She got into the semi-final where she was supposed to fight again to do the final, probably upgrade a bronze to a silver or gold. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But there was also history for Jacob Kiplimo when he did become the 3rd Ugandan in history to win the 10,000 meters and 5,000 meters at the Commonwealth Games, and the other being Ajisha Cheptegei, who achieved the feat 4 years ago in Gold Coast, and the other being Moses Kipsiro, who did achieve the feat that was in 2010 in New Delhi. There was more history for Uganda in the marathon when Victor Kiplagat did win the marathon at the Commonwealth Games, and he did become the first Ugandan ever to win a marathon championship at these events. Of course, the bronze medal was won by Olympic champion Peru Chemtai. So that's how Uganda gets to leave the 2022 Commonwealth Games, as attention now turns to the 2023 All Africa Games in Accra, Ghana, but then also the 2024 Olympic Games in Paris.
The Commonwealth Update, brought to you by Alphabet.
The Rwandan side APR Volleyball Club have claimed both the men and women championship titles at the 24th edition of the NSSF KAVC International Volleyball Championship held in Kampala. We have that report.
The NSSF KAVC Volleyball Tournament, organized by Ugandan Volleyball Club KAVC, attracted over 20 clubs from Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, South Sudan, and hosts Uganda. The main clubs in contention included clubs like APR, KCCA, Nkumba, OBB, Ndeje, among others, at the 3-day championship tournament held at the Lugogo Indoor Stadium. The three-day tournament was graced by former Vice President of Uganda, Honorable Edward Sekandi, and Deputy Managing Director of NSSF, Patrick Ayota, and several volleyball fans and sports enthusiasts. APR's Lady Volleyball Club beat KCCA of Uganda in the finals in a 5-set thriller to clinch the title, while APR's men held off hosts KAVC in a highly intensive competitive 5-set marathon, which saw the Rwandan side secure their third title of the tournament. The president of KAVC, Hamza Luwama, had this to say after the tournament.
We are happy to see that this tournament, the NSSF KVC International, is back. And it's back with a high vibe, with a big vibe, with a very big brand. One of our brands is NSSF and other brands. So that's why we named it the NSSF KVC International. It is a tournament which everyone looks at in the region. The second most organized on the continent, the first organized in the region, well organized in the region, which attracts very high level of competition of the game of volleyball. Eranga, according to this, our teams have managed to compete and outcompete foreign teams. At least we have, in both genders, men and women, we have a Ugandan team that is representing Uganda. Mainly KVC is representing the men, and then we are seeing KCCA tussling it out with APR representing Uganda.
The Deputy Managing Director of NSSF explains why they have taken interest in volleyball.
You know, it was one of those sports that were kind of neglected. Everybody sponsors football, sponsors boxing, basketball, but volleyball, not too many people were paid attention to it. And yet, it's a sport that anybody can play, a child can play, an old person can play. So we thought we wanted to get in there so that we can actually provide that as an avenue for young people basically to find a route out of it. The most amazing thing is out of KVC, I think we've got 3 people who went professional, which is amazing. So they got a chance to go out because we're able to work with them.
Kampala Amateur Volleyball Club was founded in 1970 and it's the oldest volleyball club in Uganda, and the KAVC Championship, which takes place every year, kicked off in 1995. Saikasin Sekalala, CTV PM edition.
We've come to the end of CTV PM edition tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Your company is very much appreciated. My name is Agi Owase with Isaac